So homework 6 starts out with some basic solving equations. So if I'm solving for my variable, my goal is to get the variable by itself by doing the opposite of what's next to the variable. Here we have u plus 6 equals -9. I want to get that plus 6 out of there. Technically what you're doing is subtracting the 6 from both sides. So if I subtract 6 from both sides, the plus 6 and the minus 6 is 0 and cancels it out. So u equals -9 minus 6. I add and keep my sign, so it's -15. Now on Alex, they're going to start doing this. They're going to say, okay, I'm just going to move this to the other side, so I have to do the opposite. So they'll get rid of the plus 6 from here and just move it over to the other side because A, it's easier to type it across than up or down. But that's what they're doing, and obviously we get the same answer. So when I eliminate, move it over, I just change the sign on the adding and subtracting, and then I can solve it. So on number 2, it says -6 equals v minus 5. If I want to solve it for v, what should I do? Add the 5. So I'm going to get rid of the 5 from here, add 5 to -6, and so my answer, v equals -1. And on the third one, 7 plus w equals 3. If I want to solve that for w, I'm going to subtract the 7. So w is going to equal -4. 3 minus 7 is -4. You maybe already knew these ones and will have to write on your pie chart, but you know, just in case. The next ones are the multiplicative property of equality with inverse, and they group multiplying and dividing together. But basically, again, you're doing the opposite of what's next to the variable. If I have -25u, it means -25 times u. To get rid of multiplying, you're going to divide. Now the sign's not going to change, you're just either going to multiply or divide by that number that's next to the variable. So in this case, I'm going to divide by that -25, and a negative divided by a negative makes that a positive u. And then I simplify what's ever on the other side. In this case, I have a -5 over a -25. A negative divided by a negative makes it positive, and it reduces down to 1/5. So you're not always going to get nice whole number answers like we like to get. Sometimes we get fraction answers. And they will normally leave them as a fraction and not use the decimal unless they happen to be working with decimals in the problem to begin with. So on number 5, if I have 5y equals -12, to get rid of that 5, I'm going to divide. So I'm going to divide by 5. And y is just going to equal -12/5. Now when I have a negative divided by a positive, my answer is negative, so they put the negative out in front instead of on top with the 12. If you put it on top, it'll give you, it's correct, however, the whole fraction's negative, not just the 12. Number 6, still using our multiplicative property of equality, but in this case I am dividing. So to get rid of division, I multiply. Now, when there's a negative out in front, you can either put it with the top or the bottom. It doesn't go with both. Since I want to solve it for x, the best thing to do would be put it with the bottom value. This could be written as x over -6 equals -3. And to get rid of this, I'm going to multiply by -6, right? A negative times a negative gives me a positive 18 for my answer. So when you have that negative in front, usually we like to put it with the top value, but since I'm solving it for x, in this case it's better to put it with the bottom one because then I can just multiply and get rid of it. 7, 8, and 9, what do you do if you have fractions there? Technically what you're doing is you're dividing by that coefficient, but when we divide with fractions, we end up inverting and multiplying. So they're going to tell you on Alex that all you need to do is multiply by the reciprocal. Still keep your sign like we did on the previous ones. So to get rid of a -3/7, we're going to multiply by a -7/3. Negative times a negative makes it positive. The 3's cancel, the 7's cancel, and then the w's just by itself. If we do it to one side, we also have to do it to the other side. So we're going to multiply by the reciprocal, keep whatever signs on that fraction, and then we're going to simplify. In this case, 21 I can put over 1 and I can do some canceling. 3 goes into negative 21, negative 7 times. A negative times a negative gives me a positive. So W equals 49. Now if I have it written like this, it's the same thing as having 7/9 with the x behind it. Because if I would multiply 7/9 times x, the x would go on the top with the 7. So if I have 7/9 x equals negative 49, to solve it for x, technically I'm dividing by 7/9, but dividing by 7/9 is the same thing as multiplying by 9/7, right? Multiplying by the reciprocal. So I multiply by 9/7. That cancels out that fraction. And then again, I can simplify. 7 goes into negative 49, negative 7 times. A negative 7 times a positive 9 is a negative 63. Now if you're really bad with fractions, you could use your calculator, but most of these will come out to nice whole number ones that you don't really probably need your calculator. So number 9, 18 equals negative 6/5 v. In order to get rid of the negative 6/5, we're going to multiply by negative 5/6, right? So keep the sign, multiply by the reciprocal. So times negative 5/6. 6 divides into 18 3 times, and 3 times negative 5 gives me negative 15 for my answer for V. Now number 10, there's a couple different ways to do it. The shorter way, if you remember to do it, is if your variable is negative, you can move it to the opposite side of your equation to make it positive. So if I recognize here, oh, my u is negative, I'm going to add the u over here, making my u positive. 78 equals 168 plus u. Then I can solve it like I did my first equations that I solved. I need to get the 168 to the other side. Since it's positive, I'm going to subtract the 168. And if you take 78 and subtract 168, you get an answer of negative 90. So that's one way to do it if you remember to do that first step. If you're like me and you like to solve equations in the same order all the time, the other way to do it, where you get the same answer, is this. Normally when we solve an equation that has 2 steps, we move our number first and leave the variable by itself. So we say, okay, I'm going to subtract my 78 to move it over. That leaves me a negative u to equal 90. Well, I have to remember that that negative u means negative 1u, so to get the u by itself, I end up dividing by that negative 1. If I divide by negative 1, it just basically changes my signs, and hey, I got the same answer either way. Probably the first way is easier if you remember to move your variable first, but you get used to solving equations and doing the same steps over and over, then the second way is probably the better way to learn it, because we're going to get to 2-step equations shortly, and a lot of times you go, oh, I got to move the number first, but then you have to remember to divide. So either way works. They're both perfectly legitimate ways to solve it. So number 11, if I want to solve that for W, what's the first thing you want to do? Which way do you prefer? Subtract the 73? So if we subtract the 73, we're going to get negative W equals, and what's 204 minus 73? 131. We then have to remember that we need to get rid of that negative, so we're going to divide by -1. And so W is going to equal negative 131. Number 12 says negative 171 equals 92 minus V. If we do that one, what would you like to do first on that one? Add the V, okay? Amy says I like to add the V. So what I'm going to have is negative 171 plus V equals 92. If I have negative 171 plus V equals 92, to solve it for V, I would add my 171. And so 92 plus 171, 263 would be my answer then. So, either one of these ways work, just a matter of what you like to do. Now 13, 14, and 15 are those two-step ones where you should probably do them in the order that you move the number, the constant term, that's the one without the variable first, and then divide by the coefficient. And so if I'm solving 13, I have 3y minus 8 equals negative 20. First thing I want to do is move my 8 over so that the plain numbers, those constant terms, are together. So I'm going to add my 8 to negative 20. 3y then equals negative 12. Then I'm going to get rid of my coefficients, so I'm going to go ahead and divide by my 3. Y equals negative 4 then. So on number 14, if I have 5 plus 4x equals negative 23, the first thing I probably want to do is subtract the 5. So 4x is going to equal negative 28. Then I'm going to divide by that 4, and x equals negative 7. Negative 28 divided by 4. Number 15, same kind of thing. Negative 16 equals negative 6 minus 2u. I want to solve it for u, so the first thing I would do is add that 6 and move that to the other side. Negative 16 plus 6 would be negative 10 equals my negative 2u. And then I'm going to divide. Negative divided by a negative gives me a positive 5 for my answer for u. Then we get to some longer ones where we have the parentheses. And when we have the parentheses, our first step is to use our distributive property and get rid of the parentheses by multiplying. This 5 is only times the y plus 5, not times the negative 8y, because that's not in parentheses. So using my distributive property, I'm going to have 5y plus 25. I'm then going to have minus 8y equals 31. Normally, the second step you do is combine the like terms that are on the same side of the equal sign. You don't want to have more than 2 terms on any side, so you're going to put together what you can. In this case, the 5 and the negative 8 is going to go together. You're not moving them, so the signs aren't going to change. You're just putting them together. 5 minus 8 gives me negative 3y plus 25 equals 31. Now you should have problems that look like the previous ones where we're going to move our number first and then divide by our coefficient. So I have a plus 25. I'm going to minus my 25 to move it over. Negative 3y would equal 31 minus 25 is 6, right? And then I'm going to divide by that negative 3. So y is going to equal negative 2 for my answer. So on number 17, same thing. I'm going to start with my parentheses. The stuff in front's going to stay the same. So negative 12 equals negative 8x. I wait to write my sign down till after I multiply, just in case my sign might change. Here I have a positive x times, or positive 6 times x, so it's going to stay positive 6x. But you want to try not to put two signs in a row, so just wait till you have the sign of the answer when you multiply. Positive 6 times a negative 4 minus 24. Got rid of my parentheses. I'm now going to combine my like terms. I can put my x's together. They're on the same side, so I'm just going to combine them. Negative 12 equals negative 8 plus 6 is negative 2x minus 24. Getting the x by itself. Here's a minus 24. I want to move it to the other side, so I'm going to add my 24. Negative 12 plus 24 would be 12 equals, on the other side, negative 2x. And so my last step, dividing by that negative 2. Positive divided by a negative is a negative, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. So negative 6 would be my answer for x. Number 18 then. If I get rid of my parentheses, I'm going to have negative 7 equals, and over on the right side, what would I have? (3v plus 9), and then the minus 5v would go on the end. Next thing I would do is combine my like terms. So if I take 3v minus 5v, I'm going to get negative 2v, and then my plus 9. I want to solve that for v. So the next thing I would do is minus the 9. Negative 7 minus 9 would be negative 16. That's going to equal my negative 2v. And my last step, dividing by negative 2. And so my answer is going to be positive 8. Negative 16 divided by a negative 2. And 19, 20, and 21 still has the parentheses, but on this one I'm going to end up with a number and a variable on both sides. But still the first step is always getting rid of those parentheses, so we're going to do that first. I have negative 5u minus 18 equals, on the other side, negative 2u, and then a negative times a negative gives me a positive 12. Now what you want to do when you have a variable and a number on both sides is you want your variables together on one side. Usually we'll move them to the left side. Your numbers together on the opposite side, usually the right side. It really doesn't matter, but for those who like to follow the same steps, I'm going to move my variable to the left, my number to the right. You can do those in the same step. So I'm going to add my 2u to move it over, and I'm going to add my 18 to move that over. So I have negative 5 plus 2, which is negative 3u. I have a 12 plus an 18, which is 30. So negative 3u equals 30. And then I can get rid of that coefficient by dividing. So dividing by negative 3, u equals negative 10 for my answer. So on number 20, using my distributive property, I'm going to get negative 3x. A negative times a positive is going to give me minus 21 equals my negative 9x plus 9. Got rid of my parentheses. Now, if I want to get my variables on my left and my numbers on my right, what should I do? Add the 9x to move that over here, and I want to move my number over, I'm going to add the 21. It's minus 21. We're going to make it a plus 21 when we move it to the opposite side. So negative 3 plus 9 would be 6x. 9 plus 21, 30. 6x equals 30. If I'm going to solve that for x, I have to divide by 6. X is going to equal 5. 30 divided by 6. Hopefully all this is still review stuff and you already knew how to do it. And we got one last one there, but my page doesn't want me to scroll it since it's on the bottom of the page. So I'm going to rewrite it up here so you can see. Negative 9b minus 27 equals 3 times b plus 3. So we're still going to have negative 9b minus 27. On our right side, we're going to have 3b plus 9. I want to solve it for v. I've got variables and numbers on both sides, so I want to move my variables to the left, my numbers to the right. So I should subtract the 3v and add the 27. So then I'm going to get what? Negative 12v equals 36. And my last step, dividing by my negative 12. My answer then, v equals negative 3. So those will be the first things in chapter 1, but for today it's going to make you work on the review. If you finish the review, it's going to let you into chapter 1. If you don't finish the review, it's going to let you into chapter 1 tomorrow. But I prefer you finish the review first. So I'm going to leave it set how it is.